Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. And today we're going deep into the world of cryptography. Codes, ciphers, secrets,
Mhm.
the whole shebang. We've got a ton of fascinating material to get through, so let's jump right in.
Sounds good to me.
So have you ever heard about how a Sicilian mob boss was caught last year still using the Caesar cipher?
Really? I mean, it's a classic for a reason, but I'm surprised it's still in use.
Well, it goes to show that the desire for secrecy, it's as old as time.
It really is
So
fascinating.
speaking of classics, let's talk about the one-time pad.
Mm.
This thing's like the holy grail of cryptography, theoretically unbreakable.
Yeah, the one-time pad is really interesting. The idea is so simple, yet effective. You use a key that's as long as the message itself, use it only once, and poof, it's gone. Impossible to crack.
Well, impossible might be pushing it. Remember what happened with the Soviets and their one-time pads?
You mean the Venona project?
Exactly. It turns out they were reusing some of their pads.
Oops.
Yeah, oops is right. The NSA caught on to the pattern and managed to decrypt a bunch of Soviet intelligence.
It just goes to show even the most secure system is vulnerable to human error.
That's for sure. And Venona wasn't just some theoretical code-breaking exercise either. It had huge, real-world consequences, like with the Rosenbergs.
Right. The case is still debated today, but the Venona decryptions played a crucial role in their conviction.
Espionage, atomic secrets, unbreakable codes. It's like something straight out of a spy thriller.
Truth is often stranger than fiction, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But as cool as the one-time pad is, it's just not practical for everyday use. Imagine needing a key as long as every single message you send.
You'd need a warehouse just to store all your keys.
Ha, exactly. And that's where the clever folks in cryptography came up with something called pseudorandom generators, or PRGs for short.
Ah, yes, PRGs. The magic trick of cryptography, in a way.
Magic trick, I like that. So, tell me, how do these PRGs work?
Well, imagine you have a small amount of truly random data. We call this the seed. You then use the seed to generate a much longer sequence that appears random to anyone who doesn't know that initial seed.
So it's like stretching out randomness, kind of like turning a tiny bit of sourdough starter into a whole loaf of bread.
Exactly. And as long as you keep that starter, the seed, a secret, the bread, or in our case, the output of the PRG, is just as good as truly random data for most practical purposes.
That's really clever. But how can we be sure that these PRGs are truly secure? What's stopping someone from figuring out the pattern and predicting the whole sequence?
That's where the concept of one-way functions comes into play. These functions are kind of like a magic trick, but in reverse. They're easy to do in one direction, but nearly impossible to undo.
Hmm. I think I need an example.
Okay, think about mixing different colors of paint. It's easy to blend them all together, but good luck trying to separate them back into their original colors.
Uh-huh. I see what you mean.
And that's the beauty of it. PRGs are built on these one-way functions. They use them to create sequences that look random, even though they're made in a very specific way.
So the security of the whole PRG hinges on the idea that certain math problems are just really, really hard to solve.
It kind of reminds me of that whole P versus NP problem in computer science. You got it. Most computer scientists think P doesn't equal NP, and that belief, it underpins a lot of modern cryptography, including PRGs.
So if someone proved P equals NP, would that be like the end of cryptography as we know it?
Let's just say our digital world would look a whole lot different.
That's a thought-provoking and maybe slightly terrifying thought. But let's bring it back down to earth for a sec. Are there any PRGs that are like the gold standard?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most famous ones is the Bloom-Bloom-Shub generator. I won't bore you with all the technical details, but its security is based on the difficulty of factoring large numbers.
Factoring large numbers, right? We've all heard about that one.
It's a classic for a reason.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued by these one-way functions. They sound like a pretty big deal in the world of cryptography.
Oh, they are. One-way functions, they're like this fundamental asymmetry in computation.
Asymmetry. What do you mean?
Well, for a cryptographic system to be secure, it needs to be easy for the intended recipient to decrypt the message, but really tough for anyone else to do the same.
Okay, that makes sense.
And one-way functions, they let us create those easy-to-do, hard-to-undo scenarios that are so crucial for security.
So we're talking about building a cryptographic trapdoor, basically.
Precisely. The intended recipient, they have the key to open the trapdoor and get the message. But anyone else, they're facing a mathematical brick wall.
Love it. So how do we actually use these one-way functions to build real crypto systems?
Ah, great question. Let's dive into that right after the break.
Sounds like a plan. We'll be right back. And we're back with the deep dive. Still neck deep in the world of one-way functions.
Those cryptographic enigmas that everyone loves to hate.
Right. Easy to do, tough to undo. Kind of like trying to perfectly separate an egg white after you've already whisked it.
That's actually a great analogy. It's that one-way characteristic that makes these functions so incredibly powerful for cryptography.
Okay, so how do we go from scrambling eggs, or rather mathematical equations, to actually building, real-world crypto systems?
All right, so let's say you want to send a secret message to a friend. You could use a one-way function to encrypt that message, turning it into gibberish for anyone without the right key.
And that key, that's what lets my friend reverse the one-way function and actually read the message.
Exactly. It's like a secret decoder ring. Only the person with the matching ring can unlock the message. Now, a classic example of this is something called the RSA system. It's all built around the idea of trapdoor one-way functions. Remember how we talked about factoring large numbers?
Yeah, multiplying two massive prime numbers is simple enough, but going back from the product to those original primes, that's a computational nightmare.
Precisely. That's the one-way part of the equation. To set up RSA, you start by picking two large prime numbers, those are like your secret ingredients. You multiply them together to get a huge number, which becomes part of your public key. That's the one you share with everyone. Anyone can use that public key to encrypt a message for you.
But without knowing those original prime numbers, they're basically stuck, right? They can send you stuff, but they can't read anything themselves.
You've got it. It's like dropping a letter in a mailbox. Anyone can put a letter in, but only the person with the key can open it up and read what's inside.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So RSA has been like the backbone of internet security for decades now. But with all the talk about quantum computers, I gotta ask, is RSA still secure?
That's the million-dollar question. RSA is great and all, but there are other players in the cryptography game. One of them is called elliptic curve cryptography, or ECC for short.
Elliptic curves. Now we're really going down the rabbit hole. This sounds like something out of a math textbook, not something that protects our online shopping.
Yeah, haha, I know, right? But ECC is actually based on a pretty simple idea. Imagine like a donut, but instead of being perfectly round, it's all stretched and twisted into this elegant loop. That's kind of what an elliptic curve looks like, in a very simplified way, of course.
Okay, I'm vaguely picturing it. But how do we go from math donuts to, like, securing my emails?
Well, the math gets pretty intense, but basically ECC leverages the unique properties of these curves to create really secure systems. And the best part, they can achieve the same level of security as RSA, but with smaller key sizes.
Smaller keys? That sounds promising.
It is, especially in our world of data-hungry devices and, everything being connected.
So what's the catch? There's got to be a downside, right?
Well, ECC is definitely more complex than RSA, which can make it tougher to implement securely. And while it seems pretty resistant to attacks from regular computers, it's not 100% clear how it will hold up against quantum computers.
Ah, yes, quantum computers, the elephant in the room. It seems like they have the potential to rewrite all the rules of cryptography. No.
It's definitely a game changer. But don't worry, cryptographers are already hard at work developing new strategies and algorithms that can stand up to those quantum challenges.
Quantum-resistant cryptography has a nice ring to it.
Right. So one area that's really promising is lattice-based cryptography. Remember that shortest vector problem we talked about earlier?
Vaguely.
Remind me again. It's like, imagine you have this massive multidimensional grid, and your job is to find the shortest path between 2 points. Sounds easy, but trust me, it's not.
I'm sensing a but coming.
But, and this is the crucial part, there's no known way, even for a superpowered quantum computer, to solve this problem quickly for really large and complicated grids.
So we're basically creating these impossible mazes out of numbers, and that's how we protect our data.
That's the gist of it. Lattice-based cryptography uses these incredibly difficult problems to build systems that are, as far as we know, resistant to both classical and quantum attacks.
Wow, it's like we're in a constant race with technology, always trying to stay one step ahead.
Exactly. And as we explore things like quantum computing, this back and forth between code makers and code breakers, it's only going to get more intense and more interesting.
I'm kind of getting chills just thinking about it. So, where do we go from here? What's the next stop on our cryptographic journey? Welcome back, deep divers. We've journeyed through the world of one-way functions, touched on the potential chaos of quantum computers. But what happens when those mathematical fortresses we talked about, what happens if those aren't enough?
That's where things get really wild. Imagine a world where just trying to peek at a message, just attempting to listen in, instantly sets off alarms.
Hold on. Are you saying that with this quantum tech, we could actually know if someone is eavesdropping on us.
That's the incredible potential of something called quantum key distribution, or QKD for short. It's a whole different approach to cryptography. Instead of relying on tough math problems, QKD uses the, shall we say, unusual rules of quantum mechanics to make key exchange super secure.
Okay, I gotta be honest. My knowledge of quantum mechanics is basically limited to Star Trek.
Yeah.
But I'm game if you are. How does this QKD thing actually work?
Right, so picture this. You have a coin spinning in the air, right? Until it lands, it's not heads or tails, it's kind of both at the same time. That, in a very, very simplified nutshell, is what we call superposition.
Okay, I think I'm following.
So, in QKD, we use particles of light called photons to send information, and these photons, because quantum mechanics, they can be in multiple states at once.
So it's like beaming a message on a ray of light that's constantly changing colors or something.
You're on the right track. Now, here's where it gets really mind-blowing. If someone tries to intercept those photons, if they try to measure their state, it actually changes the information.
Wait, seriously, it's like the act of observing it messes it up.
Exactly. Think of it like that spinning coin. If someone bumps the table and forces it to land prematurely.
So any attempt to eavesdrop would be like a giant red flag because it would disrupt that whole delicate quantum state, right?
Precisely. It's like having an alarm system that goes off if someone even looks at your door the wrong way. The people exchanging the key would know instantly that something's wrong.
That is wild. It sounds like pure science fiction, but you're saying this is actually doable.
It's still early days, but QKD has huge potential to change how we think about secure communication, especially with those quantum computers looming on the horizon.
It does sound incredibly promising, almost too good to be true. Are there any downsides? There's got to be a catch somewhere, right?
Well, building a QKD system on a large scale, it's not easy. We're talking specialized hardware, incredibly precise equipment, not to mention the infrastructure. It's not exactly something you can just download onto your phone. Not yet, anyway.
So it's like having this unbreakable encryption, but we might need to rebuild the entire internet from the ground up to use it.
Haha, it's not quite that drastic, but you're not wrong. The technology is definitely still evolving.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. The quest for secrecy, it's pushing the very boundaries of science and technology.
Absolutely. And the deeper we dive into this quantum world, the more our understanding of things like secrecy might change.
It's a bit mind-boggling, to be honest. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our cryptographic deep dive. A huge thank you to our expert for, well, being an expert and for guiding us through this incredible world. To all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us as always, and remember, the journey doesn't end here. Keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and join us next time for another deep dive.